Is augmented reality the future of dogfight training? To fight against enemies of China and Russia. A California-based company wants to prepare more Air Force fighter pilots to dogfight Chinese and Russian opponents by using artificial intelligence and augmented reality as antagonists while they are actually flying in real-time training. Daniel Robinson, founder and CEO of Red 6 Aerospace, said his company's latest technology could provide more affordable and advanced training. Robinson was the first British Royal Air Force pilot to train on the F-22 Raptor in the U.S., graduating from the 2-month training program at Tyndall Air Force Base, Florida, in 2006. While assigned to Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, he said he observed the same thing that a Government Availability Office report found more than a decade later. Fighters like the F-22 are not being used to their full potential, with severely limited opportunities for pilot training. The company, which received an investment from Lockheed Martin, has been working with OffWorks, an Air Force innovation program that partners with small businesses and academia, over the last 3 years through a series of small business innovation research contracts. The company expects to receive a Phase 3 SBIR contract soon valued between $25 million and $70 million, Robinson said. Through the combination of modified hardware and software technologies Red 6 has created, pilots would wear a display technology or visor on their helmets while flying into fighter aircraft. Artificial reality is a smart computer or a machine that learns over time. Augmented reality blends the digital space with the real world, unlike virtual reality, which is all in the digital world. This technology works in a real airplane against artificial intelligence-driven augmented reality aircraft up in the sky, which is a fascinating thing to contemplate, Robinson said. When we look through that visor, we see synthetically generated aircraft, or virtual aircraft, that are not actually really there, he said. The generated images are made possible by the Airborne Tactical Augmented Reality System, known as a TARS, which works in tandem with the tactical eye made by APIC. The eye-driven image looks at maneuvers and fights in relation to a pilot who is flying a real airplane at the time. Those synthetically generated aircraft are driven and controlled by artificial intelligence, so it's the craziest thing. You have something that doesn't exist, that you see and perceive to exist, controlled by artificial intelligence, Robinson said. The Air Force has worked to contract more pilots, many of whom are U.S. military retirees, to fill the Red Air aggressor training gap, allowing more active duty pilots to attain air-to-air training on the friendly, or Blue Air, side. In 2019, the service issued an indefinite delivery/indefinite quantity contract for the Red Air program to ATAC, a subsidiary of Textron Airborne Solutions, Air USA Incorporated, Blue Air Training, Coastal Defense, Draken International, Tactical Air Support, known as TACAIR, and Top Aces Corporation. Outsourcing the service's assault and combat training to these companies costs $6.4 billion, according to the contract announcement. But is it enough? The service wants quality training, not quantity, said Mike Holmes, a retired general who was head of Air Combat Command between 2017 and 2020. He is now chairman of Red 6's board of directors. "The real shortage that I faced was a shortage of experienced fighter pilots," said Holmes, who took part in the interview with Robinson. "There aren't enough hours and flight time available for pilots to practice advanced air training. Contracting with more companies for additional aircraft isn't the solution," he said. "Even if there were enough contract sorties available to do it, can you afford to pay for the fuel for all those flying hours?" Holmes said. "Today's pilots need to practice against an aircraft that can behave like a Chinese stealth fighter, not a dated aircraft," Robinson added. "The kind of threats that we may be called to go against in any kind of near-peer conflict are very difficult for us to simulate in training, because gone are the days when we could use F-15 Eagles or F-16 Fighting Falcons or F/A-18 Super Hornets to simulate things like a MiG-29 or Su-27, Robinson said. The training issue is compounded by years of budget cuts, alongside the manpower, supply chains and everything that goes with it, he said. For decades, the Air Force designated an advanced pilot as having 500 or more hours in the cockpit. That standard meant that you've seen enough things to where you can be mature enough to make decisions under pressure, Holmes said. But over the last 3 years, the service realized it needed to adjust that standard. Pilots were able to attain many flight hours just by conducting overwatch in Iraq or Afghanistan, simply flying in circles, Holmes explained. "From that, you're not seeing all that you need to see," he said, referring to specialized training needed against a skilled adversary. "The criteria an Air Force pilot must meet to be considered experienced varies by aircraft," said ACC spokeswoman Alexi Worley in an email Wednesday. That said, around 2019, similar changes were made to each Air Force fighter aircraft's specific experienced pilot criteria, replacing the 500 flight hour standard. Now, the service weighs real-world events or training during an exercise more heavily. Another change included using a 4-ship flight-led certification and a commensurate number of sorties, based on experience, in the assigned aircraft, Worley said. Holmes said future Red Air training may include going up against both NI and the contracted companies.